I tell you what the Jaguars have to do to win Sunday and whether they need to do something on the trade market to win in the future. We'll do that today here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Locked On Jaguars and making us your first listen. We really appreciate that because it's your team every day here, and we are free on all platforms. Wherever you get your podcast, make sure you like and subscribe on the YouTube page as well. Today's show and episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before because BetOnline is where the game starts. Glad y'all start here with me because we got some stuff we need to go through here today, and I'm super excited about it. The New York Giants come roaring into town at 5-1, and the Jacksonville Jaguars have been reeling at 2-4. We're going to discuss what the Jaguars need to do to get victory. We'll also tap into this notion that someone said something to me, and I'm glad I interact with so many people on social media because someone said something to me, and you can watch the bottom of, if you're watching on YouTube, I gave you my Twitter handle information. So you can make sure that you tap in with me because sometimes that interaction gives me subjects. Someone said that we're going to attach segment 2 to segment 1, but someone said that the team shouldn't be built around the coach, it should be built around the quarterback. I got news for you. You dead wrong. So we'll discuss that. And then in segment 3, I'm going to split it. I'm going to give you a little bit of silver lining, as I always do, going into the game. But before that, in segment 3, I'm going to talk about potential trades and why I think everybody needs to pump their brakes a little bit when we discuss who they can get and what they can get them for. So we'll talk about that too. But first, big game this weekend, a giant game, no pun intended, with the New York Giants coming in under first-year head coach Brian Daboll to battle the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you saw our crossover edition I did with my sister, Patricia Trainer, you really should have enjoyed that one because that one really discussed a lot of the things and the talking points and the key matchups as well as the big storylines of the game Sunday. But one of them is the fact that the Jaguars are the favorite. They're I believe the last I checked on BetOnline, they were a 2-point favorite to win this game. And I think that's because if you take the line that I like to use when people say numbers don't lie, I say they don't tell the whole truth. If you think a 5-1 team should be an underdog to a 2-4 team, that's pretty bold to say. But when you take a deeper dive into it and a deeper look at it, you understand that, hey, the Jaguars have played a certain way with a plus 24-point differential, and the Giants have won 5 out of 6 with a plus 14 differential. Now, that doesn't mean that they won a whole bunch of games by close margins and then lost one by a big margin. That did not happen. They lost a close game. They have managed to find a way to keep these games close while they establish what their identity is. And the one thing that they've done really well is they know who they are and they know what they're capable of. And Brian Daboll comes from that Bill Belichick school of thought where he ain't going to ask people to do stuff that they can't do. He's going to do whatever they can do to win games. Now, that gives you a very small window of opportunity to win, and we know that from 2017 when the Jaguars had a very small window of opportunity, meaning everything had to go right, and it had to stay on schedule because if it did not go right and stay on schedule, they really didn't stand much of a chance to win a bunch of games, with the exception of the one game they played in Pittsburgh where they got behind 21-0 and they came back and won. So the thing is they've done an outstanding job of figuring out how to win. And I did have a little bit of a discussion online, like, is that a good thing for the Giants to have long-term sustainability? We got to remember that coaches and players, what they do is they go into a building and they try to win today. They win this minute. You remember Tom Coughlin said, I want to win everything. I want to win lunch and, I want to fight over who gets the best sandwich. Well, that's what they do. So when they come out there Sunday morning, they're not thinking about losing. They're not thinking about why winning isn't good. They're not thinking about, well, how can I not win today and for the long term? They're just trying to win, man. They're just doing whatever they can to get a victory today. And the payoff for that is the C word that we always talk about, culture. It doesn't mean that that's the way you're going to win in the future as your personnel changes. No, what it means is as your personnel changes and get better, then you'll look at it again and you'll try to win every single day. And it's a continuous pattern. It's your program. But what winning does, even when you're not good, is it creates a culture and an understanding that that's an expectation. The Jaguars, as we shift to talk about them in this subject, the Jaguars don't know how to win. This goes back to how can a 2-4 team be favored over a 5-1 team? People think they're better on paper. They're more talented on paper. They should be able to beat them. They do things that the other team probably can't do in their sleep, except find a way to win. So when you wonder why a team like the New York Giants are better off for winning these games and not going through mental gymnastics of worrying about why in the hell, how is it going to be sustainable? This is why they're doing it. They're putting that letter C into their proverbial pot of gumbo that the Jaguars, if they had that already, if Urban wasn't an idiot, or if they'd hired Doug Peterson a year earlier, which wasn't on the table, that now that they are a little bit better and a little bit more talented and they would have figured that out already. That C would already be on their plate. This is what we forget when we think about football. It is your job to win every single day of every single moment. So you're asking me, well, did the Jaguars not do that? No, they absolutely do that. The difference with these two teams is Doug Peterson believes he has a quarterback. Trent Baalke, in year 2 of his personal rebuild, but year 3 of him being here, has built most of this roster, handpicked them, drafted them. They believe that they have the right players for the most part. That's what they believe. I think they believe they have a good team. They have to teach the guys how to execute and how to mentally not screw games up. That's why they lose games in different ways every week. If they weren't talented, they'd lose the same way. You know what that is? They just get their ass beat like they were last year. That's not what they're doing. One week this works, the next week that works. If they weren't talented, it would never work. They wouldn't be able to fix the running game. The defense wouldn't play well one week and poor the next week, especially against a lesser offensive team, if they didn't have talent. They are trying to get them to do it all at the same time on a consistent basis, week after week, regardless of who the opponent is. That's why they haven't dialed anything back. Doug Peterson says, this is my offense. This is the way we're going to do it. And I'm not going to babysit you. You're either going to throw the ball where it's supposed to be, hold on to the ball when somebody makes contact with you. Y'all going to block better. You're going to run better. You're going to tackle better. And you're going to cover better, or you're going to get replaced. And that's why everybody wants to replace 26. So if they had been helping Shaq Griffin this whole time, he'd still be hiding behind the fact that he probably can't play man-to-man the way they want him to. Now you see it. So you hear the defensive coordinator come out, Mike Caldwell, say, we still have confidence in him. Usually when somebody has to say that they still have confidence in you, they don't. So if he had confidence in him, he'd be like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you mean. That's our guy. No, yeah, we still have confidence in him. You say that because you're trying to instill confidence in him. We're going to see, because if you watch the episode, the crossover, Patricia Traynor told us she went in the locker room and asked him about number 26, and those dudes were smiling like cats that had a mouse in their mouth. They know exactly what she was talking about. So for the people that think you build this around a quarterback and not a coach, I'll remind you of two things. Had the same quarterback last year and a horrible coach, and you see that set him back, right? Oh, okay. Oh, all right. This coach that y'all questioning won a Super Bowl with a quarterback you saw firsthand a few years ago that ran out of here with about $50 million in Nick Foles. Oh, okay. So you just build it around a quarterback. Okay. I'm sorry. They won a Super Bowl with that joker. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. On Locked On Jaguars. I got to stop coughing, man. Somebody's using some chemicals in this building. And it's absolutely driving me crazy, but this is real. I'm not going to edit that stuff. Y'all know what it is. Y'all know what it is. I'm going to tell you in segment 2 on Locked On Jaguars about all of that. Listen, here are 3 of my favorite things: football, and saving money. You got that in that order. So let's talk about saving money right now with SimpliSafe Home Security. They're offering Locked On Jaguars listeners 40% off their advanced security system. That's right, you heard it. SimpliSafe was just named the best home security of 2022 by U.S. News. They love it. I love it. You'll love it because SimpliSafe is so important to your safety, and it's the only thing that matters. Listen, my son just built the house. That's what he's using. He's using SimpliSafe because there's nothing better to protect him and his family when he's there and when he's not there. And if you're like me, and I think most people are, making sure that your loved ones and your belongings are very, very important, and you need that security. So here's the thing: with 24/7 professional monitoring, when a threat is detected, SimpliSafe's monitoring professionals promptly contact you and dispatch the first responders to your home, even if you're away or unable to respond. 24/7 professional monitoring costs under $1 a day. That's less than half of the cost of ADT's traditional professional installed plans. Don't miss this chance to save big when you protect your home with the best. Get 40% off your order when you visit simplisafe.com/locked on today. Customize the perfect system for your house and for your home in just a few minutes. That's simplisafe.com/locked on NFL. Go today. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. And there's no place like Locked On Jaguars because it's your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. And as y'all can tell, my voice has probably changed since I started this show because I am in my office, and everyone knows my office doubles as a personal salon, and someone next door is probably frying somebody's head right now, their hair right now, with something that is clogging me all the heck up. And it is absolutely getting on my nerves, but that's all right. Y'all gonna get this work today. So we're talking about whether or not this team should be built around a quarterback or a coach. I think it should be built around both. I'm going to tell you right now, though, if Doug Peterson ain't your coach in the next 3 years, when we think this thing will be fully on track, then we got a problem. We got a serious problem. They went out to get Doug Peterson. I want you to think about it when you say stuff like that or when you think that way. If anyone thinks that way, of course the quarterback is important. Teams don't win Super Bowls without great quarterbacks, or unless they're coached by Doug Peterson, if you recall. But for the most part, you need one of the top quarterbacks in the league to be in contention every year. I get that, and I understand it. Call Phillip Rivers on the phone and ask right now how's he doing and how many Super Bowls he went to. Call Aaron Rodgers and ask him how many Super Bowls he went to. 2. Call Drew Brees and ask Drew Brees that one Super Bowl he won after playing 31 years in the NFL, why he won it, because he was there with Sean Payton. Don't tell me coaches don't really matter, and don't tell me that they're not super, super important. I just need Jaguar fans to remember where they were this time last year. You were coached by an idiot, okay? If you don't believe that a coach that implements the proper program, that can extract the best out of the players, that can set the course of action for players, that can insulate. We talked about how Doug Peterson has insulated Trevor Lawrence with all of his coaching and how he can go from week to week and figure out how to get the best out of him. You got to know that coaches, your personal experience, when you get when you get out of your feelings and you get away from your emotions and you get away from your love fest of just having this quote unquote franchise quarterback, coaching absolutely makes a difference. The Vikings are like 5-1 right now with Kirk Cousins. And the reason why they're 5-1 now without Kirk Cousins and they wasn't 5-1 last year without him is because their coach. They got rid of their coach who had probably run his course and they got a new guy. Of course, it makes a difference. You need them both. On this show, we've discussed ad nauseum how important it is to have those two people. And one of the things that we were so optimistic about was because we believe in Trevor Lawrence and we believe in Doug Peterson, right? So I said, you got the coach quarterback combination. I've said it over and over again on here. So it should be obvious how I feel about both of those things. But you can, in both ways, you can have a bad coach and a good quarterback, and you can probably make a little noise and lose in the playoffs every year because that's what everybody thinks the Chargers are right now. And you can have a great coach and a bad quarterback and probably make a little noise every now and then because the coach is so good at what he does, but not really get that far. It works both ways. It really, really does. But I guarantee you, if you're going to win a Super Bowl, you are most likely to win it with a great coach and a bad quarterback, see Nick Foles and see Trent Dilfer, than you are to win it with a great quarterback and a terrible coach. And Mike McCarthy wasn't a terrible coach at one point, and he doesn't look like he's won now. But when he won the Super Bowl in Green Bay, he wasn't behind the times. They think he's behind the times. Nobody ever said he was a bad coach. They just said the game has passed him up a little bit. So it is very, very important that we understand that of those two people in that building, people are questioning whether Trevor Lawrence is generational. Ain't nobody questioning whether Doug Peterson won the Super Bowl. You see my point? The quarterback is extremely important. I get it. If you don't have a quarterback and a coach, you prefer to get the quarterback because then you can get anybody to coach that guy to a certain level of success. But if you're a morbid franchise and you have lacked leadership, with the exception of a 4 or 5 year window here in Jacksonville, when they first started, and you've lacked direction and you've lacked that leader that you trust, well, y'all should be doing cartwheels that the coach is who it is. A lot of talk, too, about whether or not the Jaguars have the talent to win these games. I'm going to tell you why the answer was yes, why they should have won some of the games that they won. And then we're going to look at some of these trade scenarios that I keep seeing flying around all over the internet and wondering whether or not the Jaguars need to make a move for anybody. I'm going to tell you why you have to pull back a little bit and you have to really understand exactly what it is you're doing and how that works when you're talking about trading for people. We'll do it here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. I got to tell you about BetOnline, man. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting football and at the start of the new basketball season. I'm telling you what, if you lay your money on my team that I follow in the NBA, the Lakers, you got to be outright crazy right now. Those dudes can't shoot to save their life. And I know there's metrics and analytics that you can check on BetOnline that's going to help you understand that a little bit further. But I'm going to tell you in layman's terms before you go there, which you should, that they cannot throw a rock in the ocean and hit the side of a barn with a watermelon. But if you need more nuanced information than that, and I'm sure you do, go to BetOnline and find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game of every sport. And as always, they remain your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today to use your mobile device to learn more because BetOnline is where the game starts. Once again, you start here with us every single day here on Locked On Jaguars. And, man, we are eternally grateful for you doing that. It is Friday, and you need to check out NFL Key Predictions and make sure you check us out because all of the local experts on Locked On NFL. Give you inside scoop on the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday night football, plus betting advice from the field's leading experts, BetOnline. Follow NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so I've already established this. Here's what I've established. I've established that I think the Jaguars are okay, but what they need to do is they really, really, really need to execute better. The way they played last week, they need to play in the good spots. They need to make sure that they do that this week. They haven't carried it over too many times in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and that's why they've lost and have found a way to lose in different ways. That tells me that overall, they're not quite good enough, but good enough doesn't necessarily mean physical. Good enough just means in the other ways of football where you have to learn how to put wins together and carry them over from one week to the other. So it's very, very important that we understand that before everybody has a knee-jerk reaction and wants Doug Peterson to change the way he coaches, or before we have a knee-jerk reaction and say, well, whatever game plan they come up with don't work, they need to understand that they may be 2 personal foul penalties by Trayvon Walker. As much as I love him, they may be 2 personal foul penalties by Trayvon Walker. They may be 4-2 if it wasn't for those penalties. They might be 4-2. See, here's where I'll give you something. I think they need confidence in their kicker. I don't think they have, because a 50-yard field goal is a standard attempt for most teams. They're not going to do that, I don't think. So I believe the way that they need to improve is maybe get confidence in him or either get another kicker. I think another way that they need to improve is add talent. But when we talk about adding talent, how do you do it? You draft, you do it in free agency. Adding guys in the middle of the season, it might not get you the return that you want. Looking at free agency right now, looking at the trade right now before the trade deadline, every time somebody's name pops up, everyone wants the Jaguars to go get them. I had a conversation with someone that wanted Brian Burns. I called around and asked the people in the leagues, people in personnel, does it make sense? They said it doesn't. Doesn't mean he's not a good player. Doesn't mean that we don't cherish pass rush here. And the reason why Burns came up, because it looks like Carolina might be a candidate to have a wholesale of all of their players. They traded Christian McCaffrey. They traded Robbie Anderson already. So obviously people want to know about Brian Burns and Derek Brown and DJ Moore. When you trade for a very good player, you have to give up compensation. Right now, the Jaguars would be picking 10th in the draft. Is Brian Burns worth the 10th pick in the draft? Yes, he is. Is Brian Burns worth the 10th pick in the draft with 1 year left on his contract? You can debate that, because now not only do you have to pay him, you have to pay him. You ain't just giving up the compensation. You have to pay him money. He's going to want $100 million over 5 years. Is he worth it? Yes. Is he worth it when you already have Josh Allen, who you have to pay, and Trayvon Walker, when Trayvon Walker's still on a rookie deal? It's doable. But here's where the problem lies. In the defense that they run, one of those guys will start the game standing on the sideline. You have to have your best players on the field at the same time. When the Jaguars were good, they had Fred, Jimmy Keenan, Mark Burnell all on the field at the same time. And later on, Mojo came in with Fred. But Mojo was a second-round pick too. But you can't have a situation where if you say, name the 3 best players on defense or the 4 best players on the defense, and they're only on the field at 60% at the same time. You need them on the field at the same time. They're not ready to – they shouldn't even be ready to move Trayvon Walker to another position. They're damn sure ain't ready to admit that they need to move him to another position. So that's why it doesn't make sense. Derek Brown, that makes sense, because they need another defensive lineman, not just because Four Ilokan's gone. You add Derek Brown and long-term him with Oluwakan and Devon Hamilton, who you got to pay next year or after this season, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because you can get away with that because they'll all be on the field at the same time. But would you give up a number 1 for it? I don't know if you do that, especially if it's considered a top 10 pick. DJ Moore, would you give up a first for DJ Moore? DJ Moore is an ex-receiver. That would be something that you'd have to consider. Obviously, you tried to move a couple of number twos and keep your number one. But I keep hearing people talk about this kid from the other kid from New York, the Jets. He's a good player. He's not an X receiver. So if you go out and sign that young man, well, I'll pull his name up here for you in just a second. If you go out and make a trade for him, he was a second-round pick, kid out of Ole Miss, so Elijah Moore. So they're going to want at least their second-round pick back because he's only being traded because he's disgruntled with his role. You ain't going to give them what they want. You go out and trade a third-round pick for him, right? Okay, so now you have DJ Moore, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, and you still need an X receiver. And everybody else is bringing up this X receiver stuff, so you still haven't really solved your problem. Because now you have three receivers, you still don't have an X, and now you got to use another high resource on an X receiver. So now you got guys making all this money, and now you got a guy you traded for and gave up draft compensation for, and he's your third or your fourth guy. At some point, man, y'all hustling backwards and you're chasing your own tail. Someone says trade Shaq Griffin for Chase Claypool. Like Pittsburgh ain't gonna say no. Right? And Claypool would be an X receiver. But is he the X receiver? See, we can talk about what Trevor needs now, or we can talk about when you start trading compensation for people, and Claypool's going to cost you at least a 2. When you start trading away those type of assets for a player that's already been in the league, you got to pay him in 2 years. Not only do you have to pay him in 2 years, but you're making a commitment to him. When you make a commitment to him, you have to ask yourself, is he the guy, not an X receiver, or is he better than the X receiver you have, or is he a good player? But is he the guy? Because what you get yourself into, you get these problems like when you signed up Blake Bortles to an extension. That means you can't draft Lamar Jackson. It's just not fiscally responsible to do it. You can't give a guy all of this stuff and then turn around and draft another guy with a high priority resource. It just doesn't make sense, and you'll never get ahead doing that. You need to spread your resources out so every high dollar free agent you sign and every high draft choice you get, what you're actually doing is you got them on the field at the same time. That's how you win. It's the more players you get that play together, not the more you get that stack up over there like their depth. You're already dealing with it at running back. Outside of Trevor, your two best players on offense are the two running backs. Well, and Brandon Sheriff. But the thing is there are no formations barely where you get those guys on the field at the same time. So they only help you one at a time. It's like the old adage when you play basketball and you say, man, they got 5 NBA or 5 all-county players over there. They just got one basketball. You ain't got 5 balls all at one time. It's one basketball. Figure it out. So I think there's some people that they could look at and add, but you have to balance what you're giving up to get them. You just have to, man. You have to, especially don't build it based on what you're doing now. You're not the Rams or the 49ers where you're challenging for the Super Bowl at this minute and you're like one player away, right? And all your players are 27, 28 years old and 29 and 30, and you got to try to get it while you can. Everything that they trade for, consider what they're trading away, and consider that what they're trading away usually is something that they use as currency to get someone that's going to be here for 5 to 7 years. So if you go out and get a guy, he can't be a 1-year rental at this stage of the season. He can't be a 2-year rental at this stage. And he can't be a dude that's going to split time with somebody already on your team that's one of the best players you have. Think. And then think about this. You think the dude that drafted the dudes that you're trying to replace or trying to upgrade is ready to admit that those guys aren't good enough? Or you think that he is probably saying they're good enough, they just have to play better? Silver lining. 1 minute silver lining here. I think the Jaguars play very well tomorrow. I did not pick them to win because They're playing a team that figures out how to win, and they're a team that has played well and still figured out how to lose. And I don't know, don't call me dumb or smart, but I'm just gonna pick the team that figures it out more than I'll pick the team that doesn't. I think the Jaguars are better than the Giants, but they have to show it. Some things I want to watch for tomorrow. I want to watch all those rookies. I want to watch Devin Lloyd, and I want to watch Trevon Walker and how they respond. And I want to watch Evan Neal try to block them. And I want to see Kayvon Thibodeau, and if he can come out here and show, hey, y'all should have picked me. I want to make sure you guys watch or listen to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show right here on our network, man. Those dudes are the absolute truth. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson, who's a former NFL scout, bring it to you and give it to you like you can't get it anywhere else. So make sure you check out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show here on the Locked On Podcast Network, on Odyssey, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. Y'all take care of each other. We will do a postcast show on Sunday after the game. Hopefully, it'll be a happy occasion, not a moral happy occasion, but a real happy occasion for us to celebrate the Jaguars winning the game. But you guys make sure you enjoy this beautiful weather. Take care of each other, and we'll see you Sunday after the game.